black skin to shoot to kill rather than apprehend and seek the process of justice. We are here because the pain that traumatizes the black families and communities, leaving them grief-stricken and justifiably angry. We are here because of a prison system that is built and funded by our tax dollars to incarcerate and further dehumanize black lives, rather than investing in high-quality education and health care for all. Because racism is remarkably resilient. It is ancient and reborn, transforming and traumatizing yet another generation, and it has to stop. We are here today to encounter different experiences and worldviews and learn that not everyone is living in the same United States. This is still not the land of the free if you live in fear for your life and the lives of your children every day. We are here so that those of us who are black can be heard, and those of us who are white can witness to their pain and contemplate our privilege in a system of white supremacy none of us would choose. The truth is, what happens right now to black bodies is happening to all of us. We can only pretend to separate our experiences. We are one human race that is both hurt and hopeful. That is the reason for this gathering today. We believe that coming together to speak our truth, to listen and learn from one another will make our community stronger, wiser, less violent, and more loving. As people of faith, we are moved by a loving God, a universe that bends towards justice and needs the work of our hands and the opening of our hearts to move us toward the good. I'm so grateful for our speakers this afternoon. They are in order of appearance. Well, first our UU singers, and then we have Jennifer Lewinsky of Black Lives Matter, Asbury Park, Kerwin Webb of Pilgrim Baptist Church, Bill Angler of the Greater Long Branch NAACP, then Reverend Rusty Eidman Hicks of Homedale Community Church, UCC, Derek Minot Bloom of the Anti-Hunger Project of Trinity Episcopal Church in Asbury Park, and Liza Minot Bloom of the Racial Justice Project of Asbury Park, and Craig Weber, Chief of Police in Middletown, New Jersey. I want to welcome each of you and thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us today. You each have a story you need to hear.
Hello everyone, I am Jennifer Lewinsky of Black Lives Matter Asbury Park. When speaking of Black Lives Matter, I think it's important to understand where it came from and what it is. Black Lives Matter is a organized network of black men and women who work to affirm black lives. It came to be after the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Alicia Garza, Patricia Cullors, and Opal Tometi, who are self-identified queer black women, organized this movement as a labor of love to empower other black women and men to stand in solidarity against oppression. A lot of times people ask a lot of questions when they know that I am a member of Black Lives Matter. What are you marching for? Civil rights is finished. This is not a civil rights movement. It is a human rights movement, right? For the most part, we have civil rights. For the most part, we have civil rights. Human rights is the issue. So when you talk about terrorism, right, most people get a picture in their mind of a Muslim man, and that is what we're taught by what we see every day. But if you are a mother of a black son, you know that we encounter terrorism every day in America. I am the mother of a black son. He is far away from me, and there are nights that I am awake because he marches with the Black Lives Matter t-shirt on, and he is the leader of the Black Students Union at his university, and he is unapologetically black, and that puts him in danger every single day that he is walking outside, he is in danger because he is a black man and for no other reason. That is the very definition of terrorism. Terrorism defined as the use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political aims. You may think that there is no political aim in racism, but of course there is. That's where it comes from. And a lot of the things that we understand about patriotism in America is what we're taught from birth. We celebrate the birth of our nation every year. We talk about our founding fathers. We carry their pictures in our pocket. Those men raped and pillaged this country. And we revere them as heroes because that's what we're taught to do every day. And that is how indoctrinated racism is into the culture of this country. It's turning on its head what we believe patriotism to be. There's a lot of times that I've said, I am grateful to have been born in this country and the opportunities that I've been afforded, but oftentimes I am not proud. So patriotism is a difficult thing to discuss when we talk about how indoctrinated racism is into our culture. It just is what we're taught every day. You go to kindergarten and first grade and you learn about the story of Thanksgiving. And it's sort of this happily ever after, this is how we got this great and wonderful country that we live in. And there's never really any discussion about where are the indigenous people. To be an agent of social change. Yes, yay. To be an agent of social change, what you have to first do is challenge everything that you have been taught. Every reason that you've been told to be a patriot and to not question authority and to not very simple things that you see on TV, like up until not very long ago and actually still continuing now, right? The image of the black woman that you see on TV. You see the mammy, you see the Jezebel, right? And other than, I don't know, Claire Huxtable, when did you see an educated woman that carries herself with some kind of dignity every week on TV? When did you see a movie about mostly black? When I first started questioning issues of racial justice, I had just turned 14. I was raised in a white family. I am biracial. I came to this church with my grandparents who had a big house on a hill in Homedale. And I lived under this happy umbrella of what I now know to be white privilege. When I was about 14, I stepped out from underneath that umbrella to find out that I am a black woman everywhere else I go. And when I talk with my hands and I'm loud and I'm animated, I am scary to people. People are afraid of me because I'm big and I'm loud and I'm intimidating. And that was news to me. I didn't know it. My family told me that it was cute. They liked that about me. They liked that I was precocious and that I asked questions, and that when I heard that someone was wrong, I told them that I thought that they were wrong. And when I turned 14 and I was out from underneath that umbrella of white privilege, I found out that it's not always okay. And you need to really check who your company is and who you're talking to, because there are places that it is not safe to be unapologetically yourself when you are a black woman. In questioning all of those things that started to sort of fall upon me when I was out from underneath that umbrella, one of my first introductions, I guess, was rap music, of course. So why F the police? Because where I come from, it's not a problem. So when I hear something, I investigate and find out why are they saying that? And what is and then I find out through research of my own, because it's not something that's taught in school, about the prison industrial complex. And that when you create a business out of prison, you create a demand for prisoners. A demand for prisoners means that you look for the weakest and poorest, and you collect them up and use them to make profits from. And my very first reading about the prison industrial complex, my first question was, why is it that when we're talking about being good and doing good, we use the word humanity? And we say that we want to be humane in the treatment of animals, but we're not humane in the way that we treat each other. And how unfair is that? And how do you protect these people? And I, as one person, what can I actually do? And the journey led me to questioning every answer. Because when I asked teachers at school, I didn't get the truth. They just don't give you the whole truth. It's not what they do. It's not their job. Their job is to give you the information from the books that they have in front of them so that you can pass a standardized test. When your fourth grader passes that standardized test, those test scores are used to decide how many prison cells need to be built in the next 18 years. So if your child scores under 65 in reading and math and is a child of color, a prison cell is built for them before they ever even talk to a cop. So no, cops are not the problem. Police are not the whole problem. Our interactions with police are really police doing their jobs. It's what they've been taught to do because they are coming from the same indoctrination that the rest of us are. So the collective self-esteem of Black people is an issue, right? It's not an issue that we talk about very often, but it is an issue. The only thing I learned about my Blackness in school was that at one point or another, my ancestors were slaves. But it's over now, because Martin Luther King marched it and he fixed the whole thing. Everything is fine. And as a child, of course, you listen to what you're told and you understand it to be the truth because you don't have experience that teaches you otherwise. Coming out from under that umbrella at 14 taught me otherwise. Reading and questioning and reading and questioning brings me to a million different statistics that just don't make sense. Like the use of a fourth grader's test scores to build a prison cell because you have decided when they are 7 or 8 years old that their life is only worth something if they are a prison slave. There is a real problem with the fact that we don't get enough news in regular media about what is really going on, about what's really important, about what really matters, about what would really make you an agent of social change. You just don't get that information. You have to go find it, and you have to go outside of American media to do so. Al Jazeera is a great app. Just download it on your phone so that you can get some real information and look at how the rest of the world is looking at us, right? The UN came together last Monday, and of all of the problems that are going on in the world, all of the problems that we see commercials about to send 25 cents to a starving kid in another country, all of the problems in the world, they spent the entire 3.5 hours talking about the systematic murder of Black people in this country and the fact that we do not even take statistics on those people being killed. There is no number that I can give you that tells you how many of these people are being killed every day. How many of us are being murdered every single day? If you look at how many videos you see every week on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, you can probably get a general count if you multiply per capita, right? Something along those lines. So I did some research to find out who is taking numbers, and I came up with one guy. His name is Brian Burkhart, and he is a journalism professor at the University of Nevada, doing old-fashioned journalism work with some of his students, and he is the only person who is collecting data on how many Black lives are lost every day to law enforcement. And how sad is that? Google knows where you're gonna shop tomorrow. They know how often you buy shoes. They know what kind of shoes you like to buy. They know your favorite store. They know who's going shopping with you per your Facebook posts. We have all kinds of data. But we don't have any data on how many Black lives are lost to the people that we are taught to trust, to serve, and protect us every day. So yes, that is a problem. The system of policing is a problem that does not say anything about individual police officers. Everybody knows a good cop. The system is so wrong. And it's up to us to educate ourselves, to question authority, to question what we've been taught, and hold that system accountable. It won't happen until we decide that we are going to do that, till we look at statistics and realize that the pipeline to prison is real. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is a real thing. That, I don't know how, 67% more Black juveniles will be arrested for petty crimes this year, like curfew, missing curfew. They will be arrested. After their first contact with law enforcement, they are 77 times more likely to go back to prison by the time that they are 25. That is the very definition of terrorism for a Black mother. So when I move my hands and I'm loud and I look angry and I might be intimidating, at this point, I kind of hope that I am. I hope that you are intimidated by our presence. I hope that you understand why we're angry. And if you don't understand why we're so angry, I hope that you make it a point to educate yourselves about why we're so angry and get angry too, and become an agent for social change. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Minister Kerwin Webb. I'm an associate minister at Pilgrim Baptist Church in Red Bank. I am excited to be invited to a gathering such as this, so thank you, Virginia, for the invitation. Why is it important that we're here? Why do we march? Why do Black people protest? Why is there strife in our land? The answer, while it seems simple, it's more complex than I think any of us would like to admit. From the beginning of this nation, the Black life has not been valued as others. We've seen the civil rights movement progress. We've seen other movements go through. And the problem that I think we have is that because we haven't had as much coverage of it, we think that everything is okay. First, let's clarify a few things. The Black Lives Matter movement is not one organization that's just doing things. It's a coalition of different individuals and organizations who all share the same desire, and that is to make sure that Black lives are represented equally and fairly. That's why it's exciting to see. That's why it's exciting to see a gathering of not just Black people, but Black people, white people, Hispanic people, everybody, because every life is important. Every life matters. The issue, though, right now is that Black lives are the ones that are being systematically targeted. That's why we march. That's why we protest. That's why we speak out. And so we're here today to make a statement. We're here today to start a conversation about how a Black person feels in this country that's supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. You know, the previous speaker said you have to ask questions of everything that you know. How can this be the land of the free if a person who decides not to do a certain thing gets ridiculed publicly because they didn't do something the way someone else wanted? That's not freedom. How can we be in a place where people can't say the things that they want to say without fear of offending others? That's not freedom. How can we live in a nation where I can't walk down the street or hold my hands up without getting shot? That's not freedom. So what Black Lives Matter to me means, and let me be clear, I'm not a representative of Black Lives Matter. I just think that Black Lives matter to me. Black Lives Matter is demanding equal representation, demanding equal protection, demanding equal recognition as a citizen of this country that we call America. We are not, the Black Lives Matter movement is not just a protest movement when someone gets shot. The Black Lives Matter movement has a lot of different policy prescriptions. Things like housing, things like education, things like political advancement. So the Black Lives Matter movement is more than just this one thing that you can hold in a hand and say black people are protesting because they're angry. Yes, we're angry, but we have a reason to be. Yes, we're hurt because we have a reason to be. Yes, we will fight because we have a reason to. But the fight doesn't have to be physical. The problem is we will never be powerful enough to go force with force. So we've got to use our minds. So to my black people, this is my question to you. Do black lives really matter? Because if they did, then we wouldn't allow the things that go on in our school system to happen. If black lives matter to us, we wouldn't allow the things to go on in our homes that we allow to go on. If black lives mattered, then our churches could be more effective in what they do. So, see, although I'm a minister in a Baptist church, I don't give the church a pass because we've dropped the ball. In the civil rights era, the church was the place where the people gathered. The church was the place where the people got educated. The church was the place where you went if you needed help, if you needed assistance, if you needed guidance. The problem is sometimes along the way, after Dr. King marched, after we were granted a few rights and stuff, I think some of us thought that we'd made it. We'd given up on the fight. What our lives now show us is that it's not over. You see, the things that are going on right now in this country, they're not new to black people. Being killed in the streets is not new to black people. Being framed is not new to black people. The difference is that you can see it now because people are recording it. So to me, that harkens back to Birmingham, Alabama in the 60s when people saw for the first time police turn police dogs and fire hoses on young children. It's now in our face, people. We can see it now. The question, not just to black people, but to any good-hearted person who says they're a person of faith, who says they want equality, who says they want justice. The question is, now that we see the problem, are we going to be part of the solution? Because if you're not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem. I hope this is just the first of many conversations where people who haven't come from where I come from people who don't have the experiences that I have, we can sit down together and have a dialogue. Because too often what happens in the media is the extreme voices on either end get most of the press. And the voices in the middle, the reasonable people, they get drowned out. So my challenge to everyone here, my challenge is go back to the places where you come from. And take stock of where you've come from and how your life would be different if you were me. Take stock of how my life would be different if I were you. And begin a dialogue with someone that you don't know. Ask them how their experience is. Ask them what their understanding is. Ask them why they're so angry. Ask them why they don't care. Because indifference is our enemy. Intolerance cannot go on. Dr. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so every day, every time we see a video, every time we hear of a story where there's injustice, we've got to ask ourselves, where are those who are righteously indignant to the suffering of black people? Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's hard following the Baptist preacher, but I do appreciate the opportunity. My name is Lorenzo Bill Dangler. I am a lifelong resident of Monmouth County. I'm the president of the Greater Long Branch NAACP for the past 16 years, and the NAACP is not going anywhere. I believe Dr. King said, how long? Not long. And none of us here would ever disagree with Dr. King. But just for today, if you would just give me a pass and say how long, it's too long. It is too long that we have waited for social justice. It's too long where as kids, as the young lady said in school, we see Lady Justice with, and I got this off of ESPN, by the way, with the blindfold and then the scales of justice even. And just over the last couple years, the scale of black bodies and no justice is uneven. And we need to stand up and fight for what's right. America does not like social and civic unrest. I'm not talking about violence. Civil unrest sometimes is needed in America to wake us up and bring us back to where we're supposed to be. It is sad that this past July, just 2 months ago, and I'm going to read what I came to read, the NAACP and community leaders from the Long Branch area came together after there was 2 shootings, one in Minnesota and one in New Orleans, days apart. And 2 months later, the body count is just rapidly growing, as if it's a yard sale on killing black men. And we can't have that. So here's what our speech was then, and it's still relevant today. Good afternoon. The Greater Long Branch NAACP is proud to have the Greater Red Bank Area NAACP, Trinity AME Church, Second Baptist Church, the Urban Ministerial Alliance, National CSI, Men Make a Difference, Fidelity Lodge 42, and the Greater Long Branch community in supporting us in this position paper. Many Americans across the country, we join many Americans across the country denouncing the senseless shootings that have taken place in this year alone. Moreover, we join Kevin Williams, who stated, "We'd be foolish to think racism does not exist across our country." And now that we're at a point where what divides us is more paramount than what unites us. Thursday, July 7th, 2016 marked by mostly peaceful protests over 2 separate incidents earlier in the week in which black men were shot and killed by white police officers, and those killings captured on video for everyone to see. They were graphic and horrific, and one could understand the reactions of African Americans and those who protested, but at the same time, we were asked to not jump to conclusions, but to allow Lady Justice to do her job. What took place that night on Thursday evening in Dallas is something that we should all be concerned about, because at least for a short period of time, it should impact the way law enforcement views their jobs, and the general public. During the late portions of a peaceful protest, Dallas police officers were on the scene to ensure safety, were victims of an orchestrated and calculated ambush by a lone assailant, which left 5 of them dead and 6 injured. It's the worst mass casualty of law enforcement in the community since 9/11. We do not condone the actions of any individual or groups who choose to resort to violence and vigilantism in order to justify injustices committed. While we don't know all of the facts, the men and women we trust to protect us are now clearly targets, and we can only imagine how they and their families feel across the country today. Those of us who are rational know that the overwhelming majority of the police officers do their job in a professional manner and are motivated to serve and protect. They mourn the senseless murders of their brothers, and we all need to come together and show our respect for those who carry a badge. Yes, we are saying all lives matter, but as a black man, I am also saying Black Lives Matter. We help build this country, and we should be a part of the growth of this country. Notwithstanding what has already been said, we equally mourn the senseless shootings of African Americans and other minority men and women of color around the country at the hands of rogue police officers. They may be few, and that is why we're here today. According to the Associated Press, the shooting death of the 2 black men within days of law enforcement officers, or by law enforcement officers, were the latest in such cases. Headlines were across the nation, and everyone was upset. Everyone was outraged. A Minnesota officer fatally shot a man identified by relatives as 32-year-old Philando Castile while he was in his car with a woman and a child in Falcon Heights, a St. Paul suburb. The aftermath of the Wednesday shooting was reported lively streamed in a worldwide shared Facebook video, which shows the woman in a vehicle with a man whose shirt appeared to be soaked in blood. What does she tell the child that was in the car? What do you know about the reaction, or how that child, or how she will be able to survive if that was the child or his child? And I'm not sure about that, but I know it will have some effect on how she approaches police officers, or when the police officer approaches her. A day earlier, 37-year-old Austin Sterling was shot and killed during the confrontation with 2 police officers outside a Baton Rouge, Louisiana convenience store where he was selling music video and disc. The cell phone video of the shooting was posted online by a community activist. To the supporters here of Black Lives Matter, I'm not sure that selling a video, whether it's bootleg or not, justifies in death. We understand that the laws vary from state to state, but blatant violation of civil rights remain the same regardless of the state one may reside. If people are found in possession of weapons, drugs, and are committed to doing crimes, we stand on having no voice. But if the citizens, black, white, or what have you, are obeying the directives of law enforcement and their civil rights are still being violated, then we stand on justice. It is time for people of goodwill to come together and call for some honest dialogue. since that July press conference that we had in Long Branch, we decided that we would call community leaders together in the Long Branch area. If you call yourself a community leader, we invited you. Your title really didn't matter. We just wanted people to come. We started out about 15, and 3 months later, we've had monthly meetings, and we're up to about 25 people coming, community leaders coming to meet, because we want to have some real dialogue on how to save our black boys and girls here in Monmouth County. I don't want to offend anybody, but jokingly, I met Chief Weber on that day, and I'm 60 years old, so those of you in the Middletown area remember a legend of a police chief here in Middletown. Black man would have never thought to call and have some real dialogue with a chief in Middletown because of the reputation in Middletown. But today, because of the community relations meetings that we've been having, we call it the Community Relations Think Tank of Long Branch. We have the 2 council people come, Board of Education is represented, Chief of Police is represented, the Recreation Department is represented, Spanish churches are represented, Catholic churches are represented, of course the Baptist and the Methodist churches are represented. Well, my point is, everyone is in the room, and we are committed to having real dialogue and not get offended because Long Branch does not have that many black police officers. We got to figure out how we can get more black police officers. We need sensitivity training, so when you approach someone of color, you know how to react to them, and we teach them, our children, on how they should react. They should not react in fear. Because when I was growing up, a police officer, Chief Weber, you were a police officer doing your job, but you were more of a community officer instead of just a police officer. Your attitude cannot be, I'm in the cops and robber business, and at any cost necessary, I am going to find me a victim. That's what we're saying here in Long Branch and the NAACP, and we are glad to be here today. We are grateful for this huge gathering on a Sunday right after church, and as you know, certainly in the churches that we go to, we don't get out this early. But we're here today, and we thank all of the pastors, certainly the churches that I go to in the Long Branch area, for preaching a good sermon on forgiveness, but then allowing us to be here today. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Good afternoon. It's great to see you. I was talking to somebody this morning about these issues, and there was a lot of finger pointing and stereotyping, and he said, what's the answer? What can we do? And I said, dialogue. We need dialogue. So I thank you all for being here to create a safe space for us to talk about these issues instead of the finger pointing and who's right, who's wrong. So thank you all. Thank you for making me comfortable too. I'm Rusty Ivan Hicks. I'm the pastor of the Homedale Community United Church of Christ down the road, and you're making me comfortable because the front pew is empty, which is true in my church. Nobody sits in the front pew, but I also need to share with you that when I was asked to speak, I responded to Virginia saying, really? Really? You want an old white guy to talk at the Black Lives Matter meeting? What is this? And I thank you, Virginia. I think you're all kind of scratching your heads, but I'm hoping that one reason is that we need to talk not only about what's going on in the black community, we need to talk about what's going on in the white community. And instead of finger pointing out there, we need to be pointing back here, saying, what is this about white privilege that makes this happen over and over and over again? And in my denomination, we've written a curriculum about this, and we have a resolution on mass incarceration called the new Jim Crow, and of course based on a book about this and about how this is happening. So we need to be in dialogue about this and ways to stop this happening. But here's a quote from this curriculum that I just mentioned about white privilege. It says, part of privilege is that, it's by a guy named John Paddock who's white. He says, part of privilege is that as a white man, I can walk away from dealing with race blacks cannot. I can simply move back into denial while others have to continue to live in a world of systemic racism and prejudice and implicit bias, angst over possible brutality and racialized politics. This is not intended as an exercise in navel-gazing. It's a first step in opening our eyes to truths to which many of us have been blind for so long. It's the beginning of a new engagement in the work of justice. They're dealing with this, young people are dealing with this on college campuses. I saw a YouTube video that you may have seen about this young white college student who's talking to two black friends and saying, you know, white privilege? What, are you trying to make me feel guilty? You know, I mean, I was born this way. I mean, what did I do? You know, I work hard. And they say, no, we understand. You can't see it. So we need to give you these glasses. Take these glasses. And so he put on these glasses, and then he walked into a store, and the guy at the counter like glowered at him and followed him around, seeing if he would steal anything. And he walked out on the street, and this woman pulled her child away from the, looking at him with suspicion, and people were scowling at him from cars, and a lot of suspicion. And he said, take the glasses back. I don't want these glasses anymore. But that's what goes on in our nation, this kind of mistrust, this racialization that is deeply ingrained in our world. Michael Eric Dyson said this about white privilege. He said, at birth, you're given a pair of binoculars that see black life from a distance, never with the texture of intimacy. Those binoculars are privilege. They are status, regardless of your class. In fact, the greatest privilege that exists is for white folk to get stopped by a cop and not end up dead when the encounter is over. So, white privilege for most white folk, especially well-off white folk, is invisible. We don't see it. We don't get it. In fact, there's a huge amount of anger about it. You're making me feel guilty. You hate cops, right? Of course not. You know, it's people want these issues to be polarized, but it's not about that. But as we said, one of the greatest issues is when I am pulled over by a policeman at night, I'm not terrified, as many people are. And too many young unarmed black men have not survived the encounter. Terrence Crutcher and Keith Scott and Eric Garner and Michael Brown and John Crawford and Tamir Rice and Walter Scott and Freddie Gray, and the list goes on and on like a drumbeat. Every week it's a new video, and every week it's a new young black man killed. White privilege means I don't have to state my race or skin color at each encounter. People don't describe me right off as being white. I can go into a bank or restaurant and expect to be treated with respect and attentiveness. I assume equal treatment in hiring or getting a mortgage, even though studies have shown over and over again that there is inherent bias in all of these things. I live in blessed ignorance while my neighbors and fellow citizens endure the legacy of Jim Crow that sadly festers under the surface, but not so much under the surface in this election cycle. It's like a volcano. It's erupting, and it's all out in the open. And we're feeling the white supremacy movement gaining traction, and all of these issues that are of course there because it is in the DNA of this country. It's our original sin. It is in the air we breathe and the water we drink. It's everywhere, but we don't acknowledge it. And so at least we're talking. And again, the arrow is pointing not toward the black community, but back toward the white community, saying, what is it? What is it in the structure that makes us do this? So let's look each other in the eye, black, brown, and white, and admit our common humanity, our basic equality, and start reclaiming our nation's dream, liberty and justice for all. God bless. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Minnow Bloom. And first, I just want to say it's quite an honor to be here with everyone and all the people that have spoken. So I just wanted to get a little hand clap for everybody. And I also just want to thank you for your time. It's just an honor to have people's ear and for each other to listen to each other. And I am part of Food Justice at Trinity Episcopal Church in Asbury Park, and also the Asbury Park Education Justice Collective. And the few of them are out there. But I want to actually kind of start just one of the things I do frequently, if you've seen me speak, I like to start out with recognizing the first injustice in the Americas, which used to be called Turtle Island. So I want to recognize that we're currently on Lenni Lenape land, specifically the Sandhill Nation, and also just honor those at Standing Rock. Now, over 5,000 people standing up for sovereignty and the ability to control the land they belong to, not own. And specifically, it's an interesting topic, Lenni Lenape, here in this general area. Most Lenni Lenape folks would also, in this area, identify as black. So to be in solidarity with black folks is also to be in solidarity with indigenous folks. So, I think about the word, the phrase, the name Black Lives Matter, right? It's kind of like, hey, Black Lives Matter. And I think about the Black Power movement from the 60s and the 70s. You had the Black Panthers, the Revolutionary Action Movement, the Black Liberation Army, sort of these like powerful names. And some of those were actually very against police specifically. And you look at Black Lives Matter, and it was a group of people, 3 queer women, which Jennifer beautifully stated, who basically was like, hey, Black Lives Matter. And so I'm gonna give a few reasons kind of why people feel like they have to say that, right? If someone feels like they have to say it, the next response I normally hear specifically from white folks and even some black folks, well, all lives matter, right? And I think that's true. All lives do matter, including I don't know what those blue flags are over there. I'm assuming blue lives matter. But of course cops' lives matter. Of course everyone's life matters, right? And I was once told by the administrator of our church that, if we care about a forest, we're taking care of a forest. We care about the whole forest, the creek, the ponds, the fish, the bacteria, the mushrooms, the trees, everything, right? But if a certain part of that forest is on fire, you're going to go over there and try to put that fire out. And currently, and really since the founding of the United States and the African slave trade, this country and folks from the African diaspora, or black people, have been on fire. So when we say Black Lives Matter, it's because we recognize the community is on fire because of white supremacy, because of white privilege, right? So some of the reasons I'm just going to kind of name, and I did kind of find some statistics, and trigger warning, these are kind of depressing, but every 29 hours, a black person is killed in this country from law enforcement or like in the instance of Trayvon Martin. 1 every 29 hours. And it's interesting and horrifying, more people are killed by law enforcement and other folks with guns in this country than were lynched during Jim Crow. So I know a lot of people, Obama, and we've moved. I mean, just there's NAACP chapters all over. There's definitely some progress towards liberation for folks from the African diaspora, right? But there's also not. It's actually increased. The new lynching is shooting. Jennifer mentioned the prison industrial complex. There are more black folks in prison today here than there were in South Africa during the apartheid. So really the entire world should be in a boycott until that changes, right? I mean, that's not happening. Currently, the United States has 25% of the world's prison population. So for instance, China has 1 billion people. They have 1.5 million people in prison. The United States has like 375 million, has 2.4 million. So the highest prison population in the world, right? And I think we're only 4% of the world's population, right? And what does that really mean, right? Not to mention that 14% of the United States is made up of African American or black folks, but they make up over 54% of the prison system. And I'm not sure, I'm not really great on my amendments, but I'm pretty sure the 14th Amendment actually still says that slavery is legal in the United States today. 13th. Thank you. Like I said, I'm glad I gave that little thing. The 13th Amendment, right? So it actually says that slavery is legal in this country, and it's in the prison industrial complex where that is legal. Yeah, it is crazy. And, you know, I think there's always a lot of talk. Does Black Lives Matter? Do they hate cops? And the answer is no. And I think, you know, we heard that, right? I think cops are good. One of my best friends is part of the NYPD. You know, his life is at risk every day. Do him and I argue all the time? Of course. When Eric Gardner happened, were we arguing? Of course. But I still love him, and both of us would take a bullet for each other. But I think we do have to ask, what was the origins of the policing system? The origins of the policing systems was to protect property, aka slaves for white folks. That's the origins of how police existed in this country. Right? So, starting from there to today, there's a beginning of racism, and it's stayed, right? And not that I'm saying every police officer is racist, but it gets complicated when you look at the prison system, and it's filled with 54% black folks, and then indigenous are actually the highestly incarcerated, and then Chicano, Latina, Chicano, I think I said Chicano twice. And it's still like that today, you know? And I think we have to really ask those questions, right? If it was founded on racism, are we really that surprised that racism still exists? I mean, I've been in prison a few times, and mostly I'm the only white person except for the group of white activists I got arrested with. So every time I go to prison, I'm like, oh, it's 90% of the population, is my experience. So yeah, I think that's just really important to really talk about, that the system is inherently racist and we need to change that. Does a police officer go on the street and always say, I'm going to target that black person? No. But are they told to go to Wall Street? Of course, because they have lawyers and class, and you know, no one can arrest them. The lawyers would just get them out, right? But people, what was it, something like 8,000 or 80,000 homes was lost during the crash. Millions of dollars was taken, and these people got $25 million bonuses, right? So criminals are getting away while low-income people of color are not getting away, right? So that needs to change. And I think a lot of people are asking, you know, why is some guy who is part of a food justice organization, you know, talking for a Black Lives Matter rally? And I think we need to talk about the thing of hunger. So not only are black folks getting murdered in this country, but that's also, the food crisis is similar to what I was talking about. The origins of hunger was when white settlers took land from indigenous folks and then enslaved African folks and controlled the land and what they were going to eat. And is there any coincidence that the hungriest populations in the United States are indigenous folks and folks from the African diaspora today? So it's not just about black folks getting killed and shot. It's that black folks today are still hungry. And it's systemic. It's not that black folks can't get jobs and are amazing, powerful people, lawyers, and all these things. But at per capita, per capita, still the hungriest populations, right? So it's systemic. You go into inner cities and the schools are all similar. You go to reservations, they're not good, right? And as Jennifer said, when you look, when reading levels are correlated with being introduced into the prison system, if you can't read, and then if you can, you have less of a chance. We really need to kind of question the whole system that we're here with. So I just want to close out with, this was actually already said, but I think it can't be said enough, but the MLK quote, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So Black Lives Matter. White folks not only need to say that, but they need to start putting their bodies and lives on the line for that. So instead of having models of charity, white folks need to start being in solidarity. And thank you so much for your time.
Hello, thank you all. Okay. little short. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Liza Minnow Bloom. I work with the Racial Justice Project in Asbury Park. I'm here like many of you today with a heavy, heavy heart, having to face this shock and this grief and all of this. It feels like a terrible, terrible repeating cycle, nightmare that we can't get out of, with the news cycle, seeing more and more Black people killed, more and more Black families and children devastated by the loss of their parents and their loved ones. So we in the Racial Justice Project stand in solidarity with the families and the communities who are impacted most directly by these murders, and we recognize that it's long past time for a change. Like all of you, we dream of and work for a day when Black lives really do matter. And we understand that this recent spate of Black killings impels all of us to step up and take action. So I'm speaking from my perspective as a white person, as someone who benefits from white privilege. And I'm passionate about moving other white people into action for racial justice, because I recognize that it's going to take white people in this moment to stand with Black people to demand an end to police killings. I recognize that, as I'm sure you do, that Black communities are exhausted by being the involuntary front lines of a state-sanctioned war. Okay, and it is a war. Right, and the level of atrocity that we're seeing in this war is being ratcheted up, and it's gaining visibility, of course, because of the presence of handheld cameras and other devices, but it's being ratcheted up. According to the Guardian's Counted project, already this year, 194 Black people have been killed by police officers. Okay, and that's an incomplete number because we know that they're not all reported. And as Jennifer mentioned, you know, this is a non-governmental aid. This is the Guardian. This is a journalistic outlet that's doing this counting because we don't have accurate statistics being recorded by the FBI. But 194, right? So this is a war, and the war is not only manifested in police murder. We know that when it comes to things like income, home ownership, access to health care, education, all of these things, Black people are facing disproportionately negative outcomes. And there are systems in place dating back to the time of slavery, right, that ensure these disproportionately negative outcomes for Black people. As white people, as a white person, as white people generally, it can be really, really easy to see this recently highlighted issue of violence against Black people as aberrational, right? As an issue of just a few bad cops in an otherwise just criminal justice system. Criminal justice system that's somehow self-corrected from the days when it was tied to slavery or Jim Crow or convict leasing or redlining, right? That it's moved out of that, it's evolved into something new. These are all the mechanisms that have codified anti-Black racism and white supremacy in this country, and they are not gone. They are still there, they've just changed face. And as white people, we can choose, as was mentioned earlier, we can choose to ignore that reality. We can choose to live in delusion, and many of us do. We're taught since our earliest socialization, white people in this country, to be not only the beneficiaries, but the defenders of white supremacy. I'm not necessarily even talking about white supremacy as extremist groups or the KKK or anything like that. White supremacy, the system, right? The system that structures our lives. And that provides disproportionately positive outcomes for white people in all the areas I mentioned previously. And it doesn't take us, white people, actively supporting white supremacy, actively advocating it, for it to continue. All it takes is our silence. Right. White supremacy is a strong enough force in our world that if we are not actively fighting it, we are helping it move forward. So how do we do it, right? How do we fight this? How do we move ourselves? How do we move the white people in our lives, in our places of worship, in our homes, in our workplaces, our communities, our schools, our friends? I'd like to offer, just from my perspective, a few ways, some of them hopefully concrete, to help white people sort of step up and engage and be actively fighting white supremacy and working for Black liberation in this amazing moment of Black Lives Matter. So one way, I'll just name a few ways. One way is to help resource Black movements and Black organizations. Right, we need to start thinking about a division of labor in our movements. Black people and Black leaders are stepping up and doing incredible visioning work, and they need the space and the time to do that. And white people have a role to play, and one of those roles can be to use our privilege, to use our connections, to move resources, and resources can be money. Right? If we don't have money as an individual white person, we're probably connected by some 6 degrees of separation to people who do, whether it be family or friends or whatever. Help move that money, right? Move that money into Black organizations, move other resources, volunteer time, non-financial resources, whatever it might be. More specifically, the Movement for Black Lives is a place that you can donate. They're an incredible coalition organization that's funding different Black-led Black liberation movements all over the country. So you can go to movementforblacklives'org and donate there. You can also go to durhamsolidarity.collective.org and donate there. They're raising money for people who are being jailed through the uprisings in North Carolina at this moment. So that's one, right? Move resources to Black-led organizations. Another way is to follow Black leadership. As has been mentioned earlier, Black Lives Matter and other Black-led liberation organizations at this moment are putting forth comprehensive plans to transform neighborhoods, communities, cities, to transform this country. And yes, a lot of it is addressing the issue of police violence, but a lot of it is addressing other fundamental issues like housing, like food, like access to education, right? And these are visionaries. We're in a moment of incredible visionary leadership, Black leadership. So follow that, right? Find the movements locally and plug into those campaigns and figure out ways to support them, whether it's a Fight for 15, whether it's a housing justice issue. Follow the Black leadership. Also, incidentally, Jennifer mentioned this, but Black Lives Matter is so beautifully transformative, and part of the many reasons, one of the many reasons, is that it was founded by Black queer women. Right, so when we're talking about following the leadership of Black Lives Matter, Black liberation movements at this moment, it's for a lot of white people, it's learning to transform our own racist ideas about who should be in leadership, but it's also about transforming our sexist ideas and our homophobic ideas about who should be in leadership. So it's demanding us to do that intersectional work. Okay, so follow Black leadership. This one might sound contradictory coming on the heels of that, but also as white people, I'm talking to white people, don't wait to be asked to do something either. So yes, there is leadership out there to follow. There are incredible models being put forth, but also don't be asked. Don't wait to be asked. Your action is needed. Every one of us needs to act. If you need to feel asked, consider yourself asked right now. Your action is absolutely needed. I'd like to just share a bit of wisdom, a quote from a group called Asians for Black Lives. And they put it, the sentiment that I'm trying to express, they put it thusly. They said, move boldly and swiftly, take risks, make mistakes, share lessons. While we're committed to following Black leadership, we will also take the initiative to mobilize our communities and take responsibility for organizing our people to show up in this moment. We will use all of the diverse skills, resources, and cultural tools at our disposal. We will take risks, try new experiments in our organizing, and not be afraid of making mistakes while learning from mistakes that have already been made. Right? So it can be vulnerable to put yourself out there, but do it. This is the moment where your action is needed. Okay, a couple more. Go ahead and have those uncomfortable conversations. As white people, again, we get to choose to dip out of moments of discomfort. That's part of privilege, right? Have them, engage, okay? Whether it be at a dinner table or around the water cooler or whatever it might be. This is the transformation. When Black leaders are saying, white people, deal with your people. This is what they're talking about. It's these moments, right? Where it can be so easy for us to back away, so easy for us as white people to back away. This is, again, how white supremacy continues to be fueled, to be propelled forward, is the silence of white people in all of these moments. And again, we see it happening on a national level. We see white people being addressed very, very directly through forces of evil. And let's name him Trump, right? Let's name that evil. He's being effective. He's being an incredibly effective organizer of white people in this moment, because white people are feeling as though their dispossession, their pain, their hurt at being left behind in an unjust economic system. They feel as though he is addressing that. He is not the answer, right? He is the divider. We all know that here. Nobody needs to hear that. However, white people in our lives need to hear that, and we as the white people are the folks to talk to them, okay? White supremacy has always functioned by keeping those who are dispossessed by the ruling class at each other's throats, fighting for crumbs, divided amongst each other. This is no different. This moment is no different. If anything, it's being amped up, okay? So let's recognize that and let's fight that. Finally, white people, develop your own stake in ending white supremacy. This cannot be an issue this cannot be for you somebody else's issue that you are helping out with, right? White people, we have our own stake in it. Of course, we're the beneficiaries of white privilege, so of course this is about giving things up in a way, no doubt. But it's also about gaining things. When we participate in the system of white supremacy, when we allow it to go on through our passivity, we are submitting parts of our humanity, right? We are submitting and giving up the fundamental interconnectedness that is our birthright as all humans when we choose to subscribe to an ideology, or rather choose to not fight an ideology that says we are superior, we deserve more, our lives matter more. We are twisting our souls. White supremacy culture is a culture of death, right? So we are dying. Fundamentally, parts of our human selves are dying, right? So fighting, and I'm not kidding, I feel the stakes are that high. So white people, please do the work, whatever it might be, to understand, whatever your personal work is, maybe it's connected to your spiritual practice, whatever it might be, do that work to develop your own stake in Black liberation and in ending white supremacy, because it will benefit you in the end, and ultimately we all have a necessary role to play, and ending white supremacy takes all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just like to say, if Reverend Rusty was surprised to be asked to speak here today, you can imagine how I feel. I'll be the last person you expect to see here today, and in fact, I will be the last speaker. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Reverend Virginia for inviting me and asking me to speak here today. I've been contacted earlier this summer by the Monmouth County Park System, and as a first responder to Ground Zero, and now the police chief of a community that lost 37 residents on 9/11, I had the honor of being asked to give the keynote address at the Monmouth County 9/11 Memorial Service, which was held 2 weeks ago today at Mount Mitchell Park, Atlantic Highlands. The tragedy of September 11th is a deeply emotional and difficult issue, but unlike today's topic, it was a shared experience that we could all relate to. Nearly 3,000 victims, represented by every race, color, religion, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and national origin. In fact, 374 of the victims were visitors from 61 foreign nations. It was more than an attack against buildings and innocent people. It was an attack against our ideals and values, against civilization and humanity itself. The threat was clear and apparent to all of us, and it had a unifying effect of bringing us together as Americans. Today's topic of racial equality and Black Lives Matter is equally important because in so many ways the scars left by crime and injustice can be even deeper, and the divisions they cause could potentially pose a much greater threat to the stability of our nation. Unlike 9/11, however, it is not as easily recognized or understood. The issue of race and exclusion is such an incredibly controversial and divisive topic. It is a difficult subject to even acknowledge the issue. The violence and tragedies we have seen around the country are undermining the foundations of our society, and has become a cancer which threatens to destroy the soul of our nation. All of us need to work together to find a cure. As it relates to law enforcement, it is critical that we engage in community outreach with our entire community and all of the religious and civic leaders representing the many diverse groups that we serve in our jurisdictions. We have a sacred obligation to maintain the highest standards of professional integrity as we uphold the law and protect and serve our communities in a fair and impartial manner. If any segment of the community lacks faith in the legitimacy of the police, it undermines our ability to function effectively and do our jobs to protect the community. As President Obama remarked, when any part of the American family does not feel like it is being treated fairly, that's a problem for all of us. We need to break down the barriers of mistrust and suspicion and establish relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. The only way we're going to do that is by engaging in meaningful and constructive dialogue with all of our community partners and stakeholders like we are today. I first met Reverend Virginia last year at an interfaith prayer service for world peace, which was held the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving at the Lincroft Presbyterian Church just down the road here. The event was attended by Christian, Jewish, and Muslim clergy and a diverse mix of people of goodwill. We also both attended the inaugural Shore Region Interfaith Prayer Breakfast at Brookdale Community College, which was sponsored by Reverend Terrence Porter of the Pilgrim Baptist Church in Red Bank. Reverend Porter also serves as the chaplain for the Monmouth County Police Chiefs Association. Recently, my office worked closely on a project with the Korean Church of New Jersey, located in Middletown. Earlier this week, I had an opportunity to attend an NAACP meeting of a newly formed think tank focused on improving police-community relations, which was hosted by the Reverend Devereaux of the Trinity AME Church in Long Branch. And just this past Friday, I attended the 4th Annual Criminal Justice Job Fair sponsored by the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives at Brookdale Community College to discuss career opportunities with students interested in joining law enforcement and making a difference in their communities. These are the types of positive steps we need to be taking to build bridges and forge stronger relationships with the community. One of the very first things I did when I became Chief of Police 2 years ago was enhance our drug education program in the schools. We expanded the program from 3 officers and now have 13 officers trained and certified to teach the Too Good for Drugs curriculum, which promotes a healthy lifestyle, teaches decision-making skills to help students make good choices. We also participate in an after-school program called Project Plus, and this past summer we held 2 police youth week camps. We also operate a police athletic league boxing club for children, and we pay for the fees for the children who can't afford to do so. It is so important to make that connection and build a bond of trust between young people and the police at an early age. These positive interactions reinforce the role of the police as community caretakers and help overcome some of the mistrust and suspicion that has been underpinning many of the tragedies and confrontations we have seen. In light of the crisis of confidence we have seen in policing, the President formed a task force on 21st century policing to develop recommendations for the future of policing. The task force was led by Chief Ramsey, who recently retired following a 46-year distinguished career in law enforcement as the Chief of Police in the city of Chicago and Philadelphia. I had the opportunity to see him speak in Long Branch last December as he outlined the 6 pillars that were identified as being the key to the reputation of American policing. And they included trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, officer training and education, and officer safety and wellness. In addition, agencies have become more transparent. New policies and safeguards have been implemented with early warning systems to detect and identify problem officers. Many police training programs have also begun to incorporate de-escalation techniques, sensitivity training, and real-time decision-making skills to try and diffuse volatile situations and, to the extent possible, prevent incidents from spiraling out of control. It is often difficult for us to fully appreciate or understand one another's points of view because they are shaped by our own unique experiences and beliefs. Sometimes it is possible to see the very same things entirely differently when viewed through the filter and prism of our mind's eye. We need to pause and reflect before rushing to judgment and resist the initial knee-jerk reaction to become defensive or sometimes even hostile towards opposing points of view. The positive message and good intentions of concerned people are being drowned out by the negative rhetoric and actions of others and lost against the backdrop of social media and the 24-hour news cycle. Dialogue, mutual respect, and conflict resolution are the way forward. We are a nation of laws, and we should respect one another's right to freedom of speech and assembly, but we must also realize that the law ultimately exists to protect society, and we must also hold those who choose to break the law accountable. I'm reminded of the horrible events in Dallas when a gunman opened fire during a peaceful Black Lives Matter march. One of the things that really stayed with me from that event wasn't the hatred or the violence that we saw, but the courage and humanity displayed by a group of police officers who risked their lives by using their own bodies as human shields as they laid themselves across a mother and her young children to protect them from the deadly gunfire. That single act, in the midst of so much chaos and bloodshed, underscored the true meaning of our American values and provided hope and promise for the future of our nation and the challenges we face together. We must never lose sight of the fact that the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts, and that we are all part of the same mosaic of life, and we all have a part to play in making our world a better place to live for everyone. In closing, I would like to echo the words of Chief Ramsey, who said earlier this morning, quote, "This challenging moment is also a tremendous opportunity. I hope none of us squander it." I think we can all agree with that. Thank you.
I don't know about you all, but I'm feeling a whole lot more hopeful at the moment than I was just a few hours ago. Thank you all for being here, for witnessing to the pain and building hope, one person, one relationship at a time. For closing, I'd like to invite us into a moment of prayer and invite you to hold hands with someone near you. Let's make a big human chain, hundreds of people connecting. Because this is it. This is what will make a real difference. This is the face of God right here. Spirit of life and love, God of many names and none, may we be gentle with one another, even as we are righteous in our anger. May we see the humanity in each other's eyes. May the hand we hold remind us that we are never alone. May all who grieve feel the love and support of a community that knows no boundaries. May we find in each other's presence the faith and courage to go on. No matter how complex and entrenched the problems we face may be, I pray, show us the way forward, with the deep knowledge that there is no other. There is just us, working to build a world we can only dream about today. May the love that overcomes all differences, that heals all wounds, that puts to flight all fears, that reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and always. Bless you, Monmouth County. We are a hopeful place. Amen.
Amen. And that's the Facebook Live broadcast of the Black Lives Matter rally at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Middletown, New Jersey. And what's today's date? 25th. September 2016. And this is Ben Forrest signing off. Just made it with the battery power.